is the election of chairman. Do we have any motions for election of chairman?
I recognize Steve.
I'll second it.
Do we have any other motions for chair? All those in favor of Stephen Weber to be chairman, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 4-0-1. Next will be the election of vice chairman. Do we have any
I
motions?
make a motion for Bob.
I will second it. Any other motions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 4-0-1.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you really want it? Yes, I will serve. I will serve. This is good.
Thank you.
Because there wasn't much time before the yes or the no.
I think we'll have to hold off on Frank. He's on a call.
Yeah. I think it was kind of important to have him give us the briefing before we got into.
Yeah, I'll just see how much longer he'll be. 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're waiting on the fire chief to come in and give us a briefing on the COVID-19 pandemic update. He's on a conference call.
You know, it's funny about the election. My
Outside.
12-year-old grandson, when he came to the polls the other day, he says, "Are you allowed to vote for yourself?" That's the first thing out of his mouth.
There you go. Good question. So,
So the fire chief, who's also the local emergency director, he's on a conference call right now. So
Well, we can jump in and at least start having some conversation.
Want to run through this a little bit?
Yeah, at least, in concept, maybe talk about what's happened. So I think you're all aware, we held an emergency. Okay.
He didn't want
right on
to-
cue.
There you go.
Welcome, Frank.
Evening. Sorry about that, but we got through
No
the bulk
worries.
of it, so.
That was the second conference call of the day with Homeland Security. As you're probably all aware, as of the close of business tonight, the governor has ordered all bars and restaurants to close until April 7th, I believe it is. So we're just trying to work through what that is and enforcement actions and so forth, and whether or not it involves the Meals on Wheels type programs where there's congregate luncheons. In some communities, they actually go to a facility for lunch. So obviously, it's a very big learning curve, very big. So with that, I guess we'll get started. Obviously, I think everybody's aware of the situation that is ongoing and we all face. It is probably one of the most fluid challenges that I've ever seen in my career, quite candidly. We met earlier today, all the department heads, school staff, yourself, Chairman Weber, and discussed where we're at. And I can tell you since that, we broke up around 11 somewhat. It's, we're now down to, although I haven't seen the official release, but groups of 10 or less from 50. At noontime, the governor indicated that he did not foresee closing the restaurants and bars. And that came out on the 5 o'clock news, and that's why I was tied up on that conference call. What should we be doing? I think Troy's put together a packet for you as far as some recommendations based upon CDC recommendations, Department of Health and Human Services for the state of New Hampshire's recommendations, and for the protection of our residents, community, and employees. We have already, on the fire side, already gone to no longer issuing burning permits. Everything can be done online. I know several other communities have gone to virtual town halls. So I guess, I don't want to take up a lot of time going over what we may already all know. So I'm more inclined to field questions that you may have now or as we go through this.
I think the more information you can give us, the better. People that sitting at home, you
Yeah.
speak as long as you need to.
How about a
Obviously,
synopsis from our meeting today and anything that's come new since then?
so obviously we met today with all the department heads, what the impact is. This is changing on a regular basis. there's some science, there's not a lot of science, there's not a lot of study because we're only a month into this whole thing. Everything is being proactive, or all the actions taken are being proactive. And I'm sure by some may be seen as extreme, but better to look back and say we didn't need to do that than be in a situation that some countries are in, namely Italy right now, where they don't have enough hospital beds, respirators, and they are literally trying to choose who lives and who dies. This country doesn't have the capacity if we have a spike like they did. So the self-isolation and social distancing is going to be the word of the 20th decade, or whatever we want to call it.
Flattening the curve.
Flattening the curve is the other. It really, I mean, I guess from a general perspective, the state and the government has put things into play, are in contact with the grocers, the grocers associations, and there is an adequate supply of food and so forth. But if people go in and just clean the shelves every night, then they're not going to be able to keep up with it. They're asking, buy a week at a time, maybe 2, but don't buy enough toilet paper. And someday I hope somebody can figure out why toilet paper was the gold mine in this whole thing. But, don't buy enough for the rest of your life type thing. From a town standpoint, we talked about continuity of operations, or what's called a COOP plan, having depth within the organizations. Particularly with our smaller departments, finance, solid waste, and public works. If 1 or 2 employees are out in some departments, that's the whole department. If finance is down 2 employees, good luck. So we need to be thinking about that now and taking maybe some actions to make sure we don't run that risk of being down. We talked about, being able to run everything remotely, having staff work remotely, or, some here and some remote, so we're not losing continuity of operations, but we're not also risking having people altogether and losing, an entire department. And, that may be on the fire side. We have changed operations. We're minimizing the people we put into a home on a medical call so that we're not getting, 3, 4, 5 people potentially exposed. We're limiting that so that we don't have that. We've given very, very strict instructions to our staff that if you're not feeling well, don't come to work. We talked about sending employees home that aren't well, that are exhibiting signs and symptoms. With that comes the question, how do benefits kick in if they don't have, maybe part-time employees don't have benefits, they need to work those hours, they don't want to go home. But as the leadership of the community, sending them home is the best thing to do for everybody. We talked about redundancy in services, and if we have 20, 30% sickness rate in the fire department, the impact on services, how am I going to ensure that we have people going to emergencies and going to calls? Same with Chief Sergeant. I almost called him Captain again, still getting used to that. How are they going to handle it? On the law enforcement, they have a little bit of an advantage in that they have county law enforcement and state law enforcement. Fire doesn't. However, we do have very aggressive and active mutual aid agreements with our neighboring communities. We also have are a part of what's called a statewide mobilization plan. All of these things were done when one community has an issue, or maybe 1 or 2 communities have an issue, not when the entire nation has an issue. But if we had to, we can pull resources from other parts of the state that may not be as hit, or we could be going to Bethlehem, New Hampshire, sending a crew there for a week to staff their station because their 10 people are all sick and unable to respond. We talked about, again, more on the first response side, what happens when we have an exposure, when we have a firefighter or a police officer that's exposed and needs to be isolated, or worse. That's the town's responsibility. What do? It's not, I'm sure if I called the hotel and said we need to put somebody up for 14 days, they're probably not going to be overly receptive. So through the state, we're working on that. The state Homeland Security has not come out yet, but are very close to coming out with a couple of places within the state that will be dedicated to first responders needing isolation or quarantine for the 14-day period. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that people may not think about. I think the biggest thing is to just follow the suggestions that are coming out of the state. The governor's office, Homeland Security, Department of Health and Human Services, the AG's office, they're all working around the clock. I know a lot of the folks on the conference call, and I know how much they're putting into this, and I have full faith in what they're telling us and the recommendations they're giving us. So they really haven't come out and said to shut down municipalities. They've left it up to the municipality, but I certainly think we would be, it would behoove us to be proactive. And if you look at really around us, I know Manchester has pretty much shut down city government. Essential services is still operating, but don't bother going to City Hall. They're not going to let you in. I believe you said Londonderry was pretty much as of tomorrow or the next day going virtual. So I think we need to take a very serious look at that and make some very tough decisions on what we want to do going forward. I understand it's going to be it's a change in a way we normally enjoy life, but hopefully it's going to be for a short period of time. I will say that watching the presidential conference or press conference earlier today, June, July is now being brought up. So we're not talking 2 weeks, 4 weeks. He was very open with June and July before we start to see any resemblance of normalcy. So I truly hope it's not that long, but we have to go with what the experts are telling us. So
Are they talking about any testing whatsoever for communities or?
they're pushing tests out as much as they can. I know they've opened up a test site in Manchester. There's another one I just heard in New London. So they're opening them up, and they've actually struck agreements or memorandums, I guess, with a lot of the private companies to do. So I think you're going to see a lot more private labs, LabCorp, some of those labs offering it. Right now, the guidelines for testing through the state are probably you got to be exhibiting symptoms, signs and symptoms. And, if we go in and say that, I was exposed to a potential COVID-19 patient, I have to wait until showing signs or symptoms in order to be tested. Exactly, an incubation period, because I'm not going to show it. It's going to take a little bit of time. So, it's everything is a work in progress. There's no solid answers.
So there's nothing that we can tell a citizen that.
I guess
you have
what I would tell them is signs and symptoms. You can call 211 for guidance, and you can call your primary care for guidance. Please don't show up at an emergency department or at a convenient, Medcare, MedStop type thing, because they're going to turn you away.
I believe the flyer you gave us today, John's going to post for the public.
Yeah, he said he was going to get that on the website and everything.
Urgent care thing is gone. Use it like that.
Yeah, I mean, they just can't handle it. And the hospitals, most if not all the hospitals have set up their isolation tents outside. So if you drive by any one of the hospitals, somewhere around their emergency room, they've basically got their triage isolation. So if you come in, after you call, they'll tell you where to go, and they will come out and evaluate you in the car. And then if need be, take you through that isolation area to a treatment.
I
So.
think people
That came
on
out
TV
today.
will
When the
appreciate
Yeah,
that.
the Elliott was one of the first to stand up their surge tent. So in all of this, I mean, certainly don't want people to think this hasn't been planned. A lot has been planned, but I don't think anything to this true magnitude has ever been fully planned or tested. We're looking at, daily. We're up to, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, 1600 hours, we're up to 17 confirmed cases in New Hampshire. So yeah, anybody that's concerned, 211 is the best place to get some questions. The state has established a website, nh.gov /COVID-19. And that will take you to basically a splash page, if you will, or a cover page that will direct you to pretty much any site, that any information you could be looking for, on this, how to get testing, how to get, and so forth. So, other than that, I think it's really how we want to deal with the continuity of town government and so forth. So,
All right, thanks for the update. Any more questions?
Do we have capability? I mean, do we have cots and things that
no,
if we had to set up some sort of temporary triage?
no, we don't, and nor would we really be equipped to do that type of a triage isolation. We would need to direct them to a medical facility, and that would be something that if this escalates to that point, the state would start setting up sites geographically located. We had, back with the SARS or avian or which one it was, started to do regional type setups for that. So we are involved with the Nashua planning, medical planning. Deputy Nickel, who's the health officer, and Peter attended a meeting there last Thursday on what the regional planning, capabilities and resources are. And so we're getting all that information from, every angle. So quite honestly, it's trying to keep up with all the emails coming in, because a lot are redundant, but that's not a bad thing. It's just which ones are not redundant and which ones, we want to pass on. I have shared with you folks in the town's emergency management team, pretty much anything I've thought is relevant. I haven't sent everything because I don't want to inundate you, quite honestly. So I kind of skimmed through it, and if it appears to be relevant to what the board and so forth needs to know or would want to know, I am forwarding that to you. So at least as fast as I can. So.
I know a lot as far as redundant to us, but as a board of health, as we are, we should keep, try to help him.
Yes.
Okay, so I wouldn't be ashamed if you sent me more stuff to enjoy. Okay, I don't think anybody here would.
Yeah. No, like I said, I've sent out, some of it's most of it's redundant, getting it from the same document from 3 different places. So I just, rather not send you all that as well.
Just keep us up.
Yeah.
That is a good point, because I'm receiving information.
Well, yeah, you just
You're
sent me
probably
something that I
receiving-
got, because
And
I
I'm
hadn't had time to
forwarding,
send it to
and,
you.
that
So,
might be
yeah.
something we can talk about tomorrow, about how we actually
Yeah.
try to funnel everything through you, and you at your discretion send it out.
Yeah.
Because I don't
mean,
know what you're
that's-
receiving, what I'm receiving, and
Yeah, because you didn't get the NHMA one. that we
I got it eventually.
Yeah.
But not when, when I had reached out to Troy, I hadn't got it yet,
right.
but I did. So it kind of depends. He got it through NHMA. I got it through the Homeland Security
Okay.
listserv. So it really just depends on how quick it went out. So.
And this stuff's just
Um,
it's just coming
yeah.
out.
And
every-
before I could
every
forward it
hour.
off to him, he had forwarded it off to me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, isn't it redundancy?
right. Better to have that than
But the problem is you get inundated with just information, and we want
It's
to
sorting
make sure
through
it's
what you've
important
read and what you
information.
haven't.
Yeah.
so.
Would it be easier for you if you send everything to Troy to send to us, and if he gets something different, that he ships it back to you?
I mean,
because
he's
it's
getting
just
a
a
lot
central-
from NHMA.
Yeah.
I'm getting everything from Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, and the local, the Greater Nashua Planning Committee.
Yep.
So it's just, whether I send it to Juan or
Mhm.
pick BOS or
Okay.
TB,
Okay.
it's going to, and I guess if you get 1 or 2 redundant, it's better
No,
than
that's not a
20,
problem. That's not-
so.
Redundancy doesn't bother me.
You got a
Because he
lot on
gets
your
stuff
plate.
I don't necessarily get.
Yeah.
You probably get some of what I get, but not everything, so.
Yeah, because you have a lot on your plate right now, just trying to help you light the load.
And we're trying to do CIP,
Yeah, I know.
so.
Delegate.
Oh, well, I will say, I will give, our staff tremendous kudos, particularly the full-time staff, Doug, Peter, Paul. Everybody's both feet in. We've all been sitting in on, the state is doing noontime conference calls Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The 6 p.m. one was a pop-up because of what the governor made a last, I won't say a last-minute decision, but looked at information coming in, and actually the last question or comment that I was listening to before I walked in was up around the Concord area, and the fire chief up in that area is just sharing that he's noticed an awful lot of campers heading north. So, and there is an expected and already a visible influx of people that have second homes or places up north. They're going north. So they're picking their 14 days of isolation, I guess, and kudos to them. But I do know, being somewhat frequent to the North Country, I do know that quite a bit of the North's already started shutting down. So it's going to be a surprise when they get up there, and the two restaurants in one particular town are already closed. So
There's no Irish.
but I don't know how you want to go through this, or
Yeah, I mean, it's important that when we were trying to type this up, information was coming out, and everything's changed since I even typed this up.
nothing
So-
no ray of sun has come out since noontime today.
No.
So
No,
It's been completely other
it's
direction.
just been
if anything, it's
changing.
gotten cloudier.
So I will tell you, as far as
There's been a change already in the planning board.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did they cancel?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm the only one on the agenda.
Okay. So I will let you know that we have limited supplies for disinfectants and cleaning wipes, and we've ordered, but they're on back order, just like any place else. So we have employees do have our wipes and the disinfectants, and they're using those to disinfect their work area. I've asked Jerry to come in every night and go through all the common areas and disinfect this building and the police building. Fire is doing their own, and highway and solid waste are doing their own. So that's the action we started last week, like last Thursday, I think. We got that moving forward. Meeting that we had today with all department heads, we had a lengthy discussion about what action we should be taking with the operation of the town office. And at that time, we didn't really have any information that other towns would be closing their town halls, but there was discussion out there that they were turning towards virtual town halls. And I think that was coming out of Concord. That was the recommended direction for towns to go.
We're in a very good position to do that.
And we're in a decent position. The town clerk's office obviously is, that's where most of your commerce is conducted. And the software that we have is capable of allowing online purchasing of almost anything you need with a credit card.
Yeah.
So it can
One
be
thing they
accomplished.
can't do is 20-day temporary plates. Other than that, everything else from the
Or normal re-registration, but a new vehicle or a purchased vehicle, they just can't do online.
I know that Terry has been monitoring everything that's coming out of Department of Motor Vehicle Registration. I believe it's just a matter of time that you're going to see a public statement issued by Concord that for those folks that are not able to register their vehicles, they're going to be granted an extension. They're not going to be pulling people over and issuing tickets. It's not official yet, but I believe that statement's coming.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's so many other things that are way above that priority right now that at some point that they're just gonna, 30 or 60 day, whatever it is, extension on all March registrations, 20-day plates or dealer plates, whatever,
The governor said it in the interview he had, that he was going to allow them. Instruct them not to pull them over.
Yeah.
20-day plate.
It's gonna be the least of anybody's worries.
Any
about
other
that,
things
so.
I gotta worry about.
And from a
Yeah.
finance
So-
standpoint, we can do payroll remotely.
We can,
We're working through that.
where we at?
John said he could. Well,
But
as long as you have direct deposit
processing hard
checks, we cannot do remotely.
So one of the things we discussed was public buildings and facilities. We recommend that Talon Hall be closed effectively immediately. The fire station community room is already closed. Darapon Playground, because of just the playground equipment, that we protect that, put up a barrier, put up notices that it's not to be used. The park itself, people want to still go there and walk their dogs and just recreate. More than welcome to do that. The problem with the playground equipment is obviously the concern that it's not disinfected. On a regular
We have no
basis.
means of cleaning.
And yeah, we don't have the personnel or the
equipment.
the supplies.
Now, with all this being discussed, I've not even had a chance to talk to the rec commission yet.
I talked to Andy Collins before we got here.
Did you?
He asked
He's-
for our guidance on what to do with talent.
Yeah, and he was on board with
He
that.
was on board, definitely.
And that for the town office, we start moving towards the virtual town hall concept. What Londonderry has done and about a half other communities that I saw before around 2:00 today, they've picked Wednesday as the day that they're going to close their town halls. And I think they're coming out of meetings today where they've made that decision. They're allowing themselves tomorrow time to prepare for virtual town hall and get public notices out to the residents, and that it would take effect on Wednesday of this week. So I know Londonderry has already come out. They've already got their press release. That's what they're doing. And Jaffrey, so Nottingham,
Thornton,
Belmont.
Thornton.
Thornton, and there was one more.
Yeah.
Guilford.
And I have a feeling they're all going to just start. That's the direction
I
they're
have an
on.
observation, okay? Our town hall now we got glass screens with just a little pass through. You could be open, in my feeling, okay, if you positive pressure on one side. Okay, keep that way and keep everything positive pressure is blowing out.
The problem is they don't know if it can live on paper, money.
Bring it up
anything.
as a thought,
Yeah.
guys.
No, and then we
had
kind
a
of
long
talked about
discussion
that.
yeah.
And it's not so much the barriers there. Yeah, you've still got a little bit, but it's low. It's, but money in particular, checks, all that has to be handled with a card. The reader's outside, so Terry or the staff never touch the card. So there's really no contact to contact, other than maybe some paperwork, and that's easily addressed by the staff wearing gloves while processing. But paperwork goes back out, and it's no longer in the office or in the building, because I can't sit here and tell you I've heard anywhere from 1 hour to 14 days that it lives on any given particular surface. I don't honestly think there's been enough research to truly say it's 24 hours or it's 14 days. We don't want to take that chance.
Do we have any employees on either side that need some sort of accommodation due to the fact that the schools are?
Not that we're aware of yet. We did have Superintendent Jetty and Corey Isbicki in the meeting, and they had, said if we run into that we can probably work something out with school staff that may be able to provide some daycare. That is one of the things that hasn't been shut down yet is daycares. And I truly believe in part because it's going to have an impact on
Everybody.
working families. I mean, I know it'll have an impact on us. It's going to have an impact on hospitals. Is that a good thing or not? I think it's the less of all the evils is, trying to keep trained staff, particularly nursing and medical staff and so forth. And those essential and the further we go, boy, we're really culling that essential jobs or essential positions down because everything's shutting down.
Do we have employees who have school-age children?
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Yeah, quite a few. I mean, in all the departments, yeah, quite a few.
The other situation would be is if you had a call firefighter who was home with the kids and we had a call,
That's a big challenge for
because
us.
the wife might be working off-site.
So we're still working through that.
Basically, it's a transition issue here, though. You're dealing with paper and cash. Cash is the issue. You still be open, okay, as long as you're wearing gloves and you don't pay in cash.
I think,
I mean,
No, I know. And that's the thing I think we all had, it's hard. The concept here is what the governor and CDC, everyone's asking of, is that we protect our employees, but we protect the general public, and the ultimate goal being to try to slow down the spread of this virus. The problem with having the town office open, that when that person comes in, whether they're infected or not, no one knows. They're touching doorknobs, they're holding pens. You just trace every step of the way into the building and out. And I have no way of, going and cleaning every single thing up, and the next customer comes in. And that's the hard thing I was struggling with. And then, when you really
almost have
step
to wipe
back and
everything
realize
down
we're
after every
trying to
customer.
slow the spread
And
down.
this is the side that I struggle with us being down, but I understand what you're saying. Because we gotta go grocery shopping, we gotta do all the other stuff, which has more surface area and things to touch. Okay? And here is very, very little.
Yeah.
Okay, compared to the outside part of it. There's my weighing of which one's worse.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking.
And I'm also sensitive that we do have some citizens who aren't on technology and don't have the means to take
That's
care
my
of things
point, too.
online also. So it's that balance of what is the best for the masses.
Right. There's no win-win.
No, there isn't.
Unfortunately, there's no
The
win,
state
let alone a
itself
win-win.
Has looked into issues like that, and they've suspended, we'll say, using 20-day plates.
Mhm.
The governor said, leave them alone. When this is over, then they go register their car. So, I mean, we don't have to jeopardize people. We have things in place. We spent a fortune making sure we had things in place. Why are we not even considering using it?
Is there anything that is transacted here that can't be put off for a couple of weeks?
There's, for example, I know one of the things, and this is so fluid, things that are coming up. April 1st, I think there's a deadline for people to apply for certain tax credits and exemptions. And I saw where towns are now saying, okay, we're going to extend that deadline, till June 1st.
Yeah.
So all that stuff we're going to learn every single day. We're going to learn more and more about that. One of the things
that
with
can be put off. I mean,
yes, that's the thing, and also with this concept of virtual town hall, there's another piece of it, and what towns are trying to do is that they would schedule appointments for people that need, for whatever reason, need to come and do business. And the idea behind being able to schedule it is, one, we can manage the individuals coming. Maybe they don't need to enter the building. We can go out, hand something through the windshield of the
Yeah.
car. It's going to be a learning process, but we're
It's a
not saying
flow
we're
thing.
having complete shutdown other than,
People are out there listening to us, and when you say virtual, I'm not a IT guy.
right.
Some of you are very adapted to it, and I bless you guys, okay? Build a house someday, okay?
just over the internet, basically.
Yeah.
So you can pay your property taxes online. You can register your car online.
See your dog.
You can register your dog online.
Doesn't have children that help them with it.
Or grandchildren.
It's your 4-year-old now.
I think to Troy's point,
And grandchildren.
the idea is they could call and have somebody walk them through it, or they could call and say, I just can't, I need to do this. It could be, I need to get an oil burner replacement permit. Take care of it. We'll deal with it after the fact. It's not so much, closing the doors and shutting out the lights as it is limiting access, limiting exposure, and having to constantly be on top of cleaning and
Or
sanitizing.
maybe have a drive-through type of situation for,
Mhm.
they call ahead and then
Yep, walk out and greet them.
And you
Yeah.
walk out and greet them.
that way you don't have the contamination factor to deal with.
And there, to get back to your question, what can you put off? We had discussion like a building permit. Well, maybe we can take that building permit application. We have software now where they can apply online.
They can do it online.
And if they can't, for whatever reason, maybe we can take the information down. We'll say, we'll get back to you. Go ahead,
You could put it in. Well, one of the
Right.
girls could. put
Yeah,
it
right.
in.
They could call it in and
Necessary.
right.
and we can,
Not-
just follow up on it later.
Really, the bigger concern on the building and department side is the inspections. And going out and being in an environment where a family is self isolated, and what we've already started to do with that is in the new construction, when Pete gets there, he talks to the foreman, they clear the site, everybody gets a 5-minute coffee break. Peter does what he needs to do, he leaves, and they can go back to work. And the foreman, and they're maintaining a distance. In a home, he's asking before he goes, even steps in the front door. Has anyone said, he's got, a list of 3 or 4 questions to ask. And if any one of them is yes, or he even questions any of them, he'll just say, we're going to reschedule and we'll address each one individually on, whether or not we're not going to put, he has gloves so that anytime he goes into a home, he's wearing nitrile gloves so that there's no touch issues. So we're trying to do the best we can with what we know. And tomorrow that could change altogether and he's not going out at all.
Right.
And he'll be there to answer the phone to walk you through getting your building permit. But,
That would be the thing, is if you're gonna have him in here, he can take that.
Right.
call.
Yep. Oh, and he'd be happy
Go
to.
for it.
He'd be
on
happy
his own
to.
computer.
Yep.
I think that our people are our most important asset, and we need to do everything we can to make sure they're protected. And anything we can do to, for it.
I fully agree.
We need to make sure that the continuity of government is there.
Yep.
And when you only have 1 or 2 people in a department, you got to take, and it may be alternating days, just so we haven't got to that point, but it's one of these things. I'm at least constantly thinking outside the box. What could, every action has equal and opposite reaction, and we're seeing it now. Like I said, one of the questions on the conference call for that I was just on with shutting down restaurants and bars for in-house was, what about Legions, Masonic Halls, Eagles Clubs? Are they, and quite candidly, the assistant commissioner of safety said, you know what, we got to go back to the governor and the attorney general to see what their intent was. So we can't answer that question. So maybe by now I've already got that email answered, but
As we spoke today, everything has a ripple effect to it.
yeah. And quite honestly, a lot of it was because Mass shut down. There was a concern for a significant influx tomorrow
Wish they missed by
for
that.
corned beef. And so I think that was a big driver in the decision, the last, because at noontime, he was very candid that he didn't, I don't want to say didn't see a need, but he wasn't really considering it at noontime.
No, he was not.
And at, 4 or 5 o'clock, it became apparent through the course of those 4 hours that we had to do something to protect the southern part of the state for the most part. So,
I like your thought about alternating days too. If we have to be open, or even like the schools, if they have to be open, they have to have somebody there, maybe just one person
Mhm.
to answer the phones or something, not a
Right.
staff. And if they have sick time or earn time, maybe they can use it. I mean, that's what
we
it's
haven't
there
even
for.
seen on that, we haven't even seen what's going to come out of that and so
A lot of
forth.
ifs on that one.
Yeah, that's such a moving target too, is,
Well, we're talking
what's,
public sector. That's us, okay? We're trying to protect the public sector
Mhm.
here, our employees. Stuff like that. Private sector is also the taxpayer.
Mhm.
And they're the ones that are really going through a harder
Mhm.
time anyways,
Yep.
okay? They gotta really think of how they're gonna do it. The corporate, the banks, Algae down there, Jack's Place, how the little 2 restaurants,
Mhm.
all these little places, okay? And how it's gonna affect everybody. Your place of employment, okay, in Nashville, Manchester, airport, wherever you gotta go. It's all, there's a mass.
Oh, it's
this, yeah,
We
I mean,
don't
this
know what's
is,
gonna happen. We gotta play it by ear. Each day is gonna be new. Like when I said here, the windows would help, but that may change if they find something else out there, they come back. Or they feel that St. Patrick's Day is for Christmas, or put that back up. I don't know. I'm just saying, there's certain things that are gonna, next week, like Frank said, it's gonna change again.
As of today, we were mandated to work from home.
that's so common. It's, I'm seeing places that are just shutting down because they're not going to take a chance. Not going to take a chance. So you're right. I mean, to Kevin's point, the impact, we haven't even started to see the global impact,
seen
or the economic impact, because small businesses, I would expect we'll see a lot of small businesses just never reopen because they took such a hit.
The big governments are now gonna meet.
Oh, we would hope they're going to do something, but
Japan and
yeah.
United States, Canada, they're all getting together in an economic meeting
Hmm.
because
Gotta.
everybody's gonna be broke when this thing is
Oh, yeah.
over.
Gotta.
Yes.
Because the stock market's gone in a hole. I mean, it's just a very scary situation.
You got Russia and Saudi going back and forth on oil, dropping that down.
But
So some of the direction that we need this evening, and again, if we take this action, give us direction today, we're just basing this on what we know right now, and then we're going to meet again,
Next Monday.
and we're going to then
If not before, depending on what transpires.
you're going to be meeting a lot, I'm sure. So
yeah,
we take positions now. Those decisions can be changed, but we just do this, until further notice. But the big thing was, as we start moving towards, this virtual town hall concept, if the board supports that, we have to have conversations about having our staff on a rotation coming and going so that we don't have everyone in the building all at the same time. I have people right now, I have an employee that traveled internationally, arrived back today. I informed that employee to go home. I told that employee that, we would pay that employee and, but stay away from work. We have an employee that left over the weekend for business, for training, town related training. And that person's going to be coming back. So, again, we don't, how are we handling that person?
Because last week we didn't know that,
We didn't.
they may be where they are for a while.
So,
Fortunately, it's not
I
foreign
think
travel.
at
It's
this point in time, because we don't know what we have,
Put them in the old fire station.
our position is that let the department heads manage the department. Nobody's forced to use their earned time or sick time at this point in time until we kind of get a better handle on how we're managing this.
Do we have the,
do you
the
know
cap-
what Londonderry is doing for their employees that?
I haven't talked to them directly. I haven't talked to Mr. Smith over there directly. I've seen on their press releases that they're doing a mixture of people. If they can work home remotely, then they're working home remotely. But I don't know, how they're handling someone who.
We don't have a lot that would be
We-
able to work at home, right?
That's the thing, but we could rotate. So we could rotate some employees and say, okay, you come in, today, and then tomorrow someone else comes in. Try to limit the
Continue to
number
pay
of
'em,
people
though
that's
they
here.
didn't-
Yeah.
I would
That's-
think you would.
I think
Yeah,
so,
that's what
too.
I'm
I
saying.
definitely
I just need to make sure the
Definitely.
board's comfortable with that. And then as we get going, these are the things we're going to have to talk about. When do we stop? I don't know. I mean, we're sitting here.
Well, I don't
I'm
think
hearing
we can-
June,
We
July.
can't
think you
predict
put a
next week,
date
let
or a
alone.
time.
I can't put a date right now.
We really can't. I mean, so right now, the biggest thing I think we have to look at is what is the board's view on public meetings? Do we cancel them all except for emergency
We're
operations
just on your meetings, and we've already moved the emergency ops to
to a
to
WebEx?
WebExes, so just to prevent everybody being in a room, so.
Well, in that case, guys, I'll be honest with you. We don't even get 10 people here.
We need to meet.
Well, you'd
Yeah.
have
do we
to-
have the
Need to meet.
capability of pulling together a teleconference or,
We were
So then I
we
would
were
say
told
was
today that we could.
memorandum- Yeah, memorandum was
so
also
for
passed.
us, for department heads, that sort of thing, could you do that pretty rapidly?
So that was one of the guidances that came out today from the Attorney General's office, that if the chair of the board deems it to be an emergency, and for the sake of preventing the spread and the risk of, this group being together and so forth, that it is allowed. I
It was
didn't
allowed to
grab
have a
that.
virtual meeting. You have to still have a public gathering spot
Yeah.
where people can view it.
With the chairman, I did see
Yeah,
that.
but the chairman or a designee has
Actually,
to be here.
I reread that, and it didn't say anybody had to be there. You just had to have the ability for them to
Ask questions.
interact. So even if it was a speakerphone sitting on
Right.
the desk, and they're viewing it, you could conceivably, and again, my interpretation, I'd certainly want to run it by our legal, but as long as they have a way to communicate with the board, then that
did
would
say
meet
it.
the expectations of 91A.
Yeah, it
I mean-
said,
Had a roll call
And every vote had to be a roll call because you're remote.
All members of the public body can meet electronically if they comply with RSA 91A2, Roman numeral 2, and the presiding officer declares the emergency to be a meeting. However, the public body is still required to provide a physical meeting space where the public can attend to hear all participating board members. Practically speaking, this would generally mean that at least one board member, usually the chair, would be present at the meeting space to run the meeting. However, given current extraordinary circumstances, someone other than a board member, for example, town manager or administrator, could be present to run the meeting space and ensure that the electronic meeting is operating in a manner that the meeting is still open to the public who do attend.
Do we have speaker phones?
Yes.
Here's one.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, okay.
So we could have them call in if they had questions.
We also have the capability, I believe, Russ, you're here, that we can get questions through YouTube feed, Facebook feed.
We can enable that, yes.
Okay.
And we could also have this room open with the conference call and the speakerphone where we could televise that, take questions from anybody in the room or anybody online,
No more than
feed
10.
it to you guys, televise anybody who happens to have a Skype connection.
Okay.
We can get you on the big screen.
So
So yes, we're ready to go if we
Thank
needed
you,
to.
Russ.
what do we do if tomorrow one of us comes down with it?
Well, that's a great question. We were talking about that earlier today, too.
We had that conversation. One is okay. Well, it's not okay, but
You're allowed to have one.
when you drop below a quorum, then
No, but once you have one person that has it, then everybody is sort of suspect.
right.
If you were in
Right.
contact, definitely.
Right, so that's where when we talk about having a virtual meeting or a conference, you'd all be at, I would assume, home, calling in, and somebody would be here manning the star phone.
Can you do a
Um,
conference call on that
Yes.
Yeah,
with all
Yeah.
of us?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
yeah,
perfect.
so it'd be a number you call into with an access code, and no different than when I was on a Homeland Security with, 50 fire chiefs, emergency management directors, police chiefs from around
we
the
do have the
state.
capabilities.
Call and you
Yeah.
put your access code. and
Yeah.
We can discuss.
So you could conceivably
Good
all be
numbers
at your own home, calling in. Everything is live over this and fed to the.
Moderator will keep the
And you
calls.
can
Who's gonna
rotate
speak
coming in
first,
to
who's not.
to sign paperwork or
Yeah,
whatever,
sure.
and put it in one particular.
Yep.
place.
But, you know,
Send me a
everyone, the
moderator.
citizens can be at home, or
They could
But the
even, you
law
could set it
is-
up, they could call in,
they have physically, they could come into this room and sit in that chair,
just have to provide them
Yeah,
space.
conversation.
listen to the conversation live, and
So,
ask questions. Safely.
so maybe it would behoove us to have, for instance, Russ trained on how to set this up so that he could turn on the TV and set up the teleconference, and none of us would have to be here.
Right.
Well, one
And,
of us has to be here.
One of us has.
One
to be
person,
here.
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Need a
But that's,
It's okay. That's just
but
fine.
we should,
It has to
we
be a
really should
moderator.
go in that direction, because that's what we're trying to do.
Sure,
We're trying to
absolutely.
prevent all of us
Absolutely.
from
Yeah, we're-
transmitting this
We're
virus.
subject to catch it just like anybody else.
Because there's a few of us here that are in that danger zone, you know? I'm talking about Jack.
Thanks.
I'm not saying a word.
Right there with.
Most cases, I've been involved with these calls before. I know Steve does in his line of work, where there's a moderator. There has to be somebody controlling
Right.
questions coming in and out and being announced to speak. Okay?
Yeah,
So that's what it's important. There's always going to be that one person. Whoever's here is going to be the moderator.
Of course.
Okay? We get Frank to do it every time she wants to.
Um,
I'm just saying.
yeah, and that's, I think, to the point of the law, it has to be a public space available so that, but I mean, quite honestly, no different than you calling in from your homes. They could call in from their home, their office, wherever, and be queued for a question, which goes live to everybody. The question gets answered. If requires a vote's taken by roll call so that they know. Yeah, so
And the
that
person
was,
doesn't have to be here. On a lot of those calls, there's actually an operator
right.
who the question gets posed first,
Yeah,
and then
and
they
I'd
announce it
have to
through.
defer to John because I'm
Yeah.
not sure how our
What
system is
capabilities they
set up.
exactly
but-
have. Yeah.
Correct.
Is there anything that we need to do with elderly shut-in types who
Gotta go.
don't have internet access? Is there anything particularly?
I think that we don't have a list that I'm aware of that, to readily available to go to, 6, 8, 10 different addresses that would be a neighbor check on neighbor type thing,
Most of the elderly have,
have
caretakers
some
down
kind,
at-
somebody checking up on them. And
24/7.
quite honestly, if they're not going out, that's, the best thing that could.
What's that?
I said, if
The
they're
IT
not
director.
going out,
You must have heard
so
us
if,
talking
if
about
it's,
them.
if it's an older person that's not out and more or less at home and doesn't go out a lot, that's the best you could ask for, because the less they go out, the less chance they have of, unless they're having company over, and so forth.
I'm
But
just thinking of someone who's at home who has been exposed previously, and now they're home, and now they're coming down with it. I suppose they just use a telephone.
yeah, they can call 911 to 911. So I probably neglected to mention that. If you call 911 now, you are going to be asked questions. Have you traveled outside the country? Actually, now I think it's have you traveled at all in the last 14 days? And they're actually going to screen, in addition to all their emergency medical call screening, they're screening for signs and symptoms of COVID-19. And they will forewarn first responders that we've got, 2 positive answers to the 19 screening,
Pseudo.
which means, okay, start, take extra precautions.
I've heard 211 mentioned.
So 211 is an informational line. 911 is for emergency. 211 is a statewide number for basically any information on this. It's health,
Especially health.
mental health. So it's a non-emergent information number.
Okay.
So, but right now it's being staffed. They're getting record numbers of calls a day on 211 with, I've got this, I've got that. I just came back from wherever, what should I do? And if need be, they're being referred to somebody over at, a medical person over at DHHS for further screening, or referred to their primary care, or another number to call to further medically screen them. So 211 is just easier to remember than, some 7-digit number.
So our IT director, John Burrell, just came
I
in.
see
John,
that.
can you give us an update on what we can do for virtual meetings, please?
So, with virtual meetings, we can have several meetings going on. We can participate up to 100 people. I heard the conversation, if the idea is to have a phone in the ear, certainly the cable committee can dial that phone into that bridge and have partake in that. Beyond that, it's pretty straightforward, that perspective. People could join it, but my concern is that may cause more conflict, right? So it is a private meeting. Well, I shouldn't say it's private. The way it's set up, I know it's public, I'm talking the service is private.
Private, yeah.
We could advertise the URL and people could click in and listen into it and be like a participant, but that may be a little bit of chaotic. I like the idea if someone comes in and they want to sit in here, certainly the voice can, the audio could be up and they listen to the meeting. We potentially could broadcast the same joint meeting over that big screen instead of allocate a computer to do that, but we can probably do that too if that's a requirement.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So we have the technology.
Is there any population out there in the community that we need to reach out to that could need service? I'm thinking of an elderly person that doesn't really have any family.
The churches would know that.
I think that would come from,
Neighbor check.
neighbor checking neighbor, or if you personally know somebody, that type of thing. Certainly, if we can, if we come up with a list, we can certainly set up a daily check, a daily call. I don't think we're talking hundreds of people, but certainly if we can get some kind of a list, we're happy to set up some kind of a daily check-in,
Police department must
Yeah,
have
I don't know if
something,
they do
'cause
it-
they do.
like a good neighbor
Wellness
welfare.
check.
Yeah.
They're
So.
called by a relative and ask the.
So yeah, if we can get the feedback on creating a list of people that, and it may be just a one call, hey, we just, we got your name, we want to check up, I'm fine, don't bother calling me again, or yeah, I appreciate it. And we'll just keep checking with them on a regular basis. But we don't have a list really I don't have a list to pull out.
No, most cases they use it, I think, Frank, you're right, okay, and Rich is too. The police department, they have people in town that they normally go see, because the kids are somewhere else and the parents are.
Yeah.
And they're on a list to check on that, they just go and take a ride and say, hi. We ought to check into that a little bit.
Check with Ben.
Yeah, I'll check on that.
Maybe it would behoove us too, not necessarily for now, but we don't know what we're going to be in 2 weeks or so. Just to reach out to, I mean, I think the WhatsApp page is a wonderful resource for us. But if we could just say, if you know anybody in your neighborhood that could possibly fit into this, and reach out, and maybe we could develop a list. And I'm not thinking about hundreds of people. I'm talking maybe a dozen, 2 dozen, people.
They reached out to Donna. She could start a list.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll start with the police, see what they do, and then it might be that if we want them to go directly to police, but we can do it. Yeah.
I mean, we might have somebody out there that's run out of toilet paper or something. But
I think to that's a very valid point, because, shelves, by the time some of the older folks get out to do their shopping, the shelves will clear. So that's a very valid point. So, yeah, I mean, if we can get it out, we'll check with the PD in the morning. And certainly, somebody knows is listening tonight or watching, call town hall, call the police station, call the fire station. We'll start creating a list, and
Don't we have pantries in town that we could maybe
Yes.
get to their
Yep.
directors and see if they have some
The church
names of
Yep.
people that,
church pantry still,
Yeah.
as far as I know, still in existence.
Peoples runs
The
the one
Peoples, yeah.
church,
Yeah.
but
yeah, I think there's 2 in town.
not just elderly, but perhaps someone's had an operation recently and they can't get out or something,
I'm sure by now somebody on social media already posted it for us.
I was thinking the same thing.
I know that the WhatsApp team you just said did broadcast it out to people. There are people around that can help. People that can reach out.
Who
That is
want
a great
to.
resource. There's 4,000 people that watch and listen to that page. So I'm sure that's being addressed. Can I just address the question around continuity of service? There was a talk about, employees not being able to get in the office and be able to work. I just want to make sure that y'all know. So I've taken action. All key functions that require a computer, not necessarily talking to someone, can get to remotely. If they have the setup at home, we can get them onto the computers here. Payroll could be executed. Obviously, paper checks are the challenge. In addition, we can also take critical phone extensions and forward it to personal cell phones to allow that communication to happen too. So there are things in the works that can be executed on if we need to execute on that.
Thank you, John.
Okay, fantastic.
Great,
Thanks, Joe.
thank you.
All since noontime. I'm impressed.
All right.
I didn't crash the phone system while I was doing it, but I tried.
You didn't go to the meeting today, right, this morning?
No, he was there. No, that's what I said. All
With
since.
us.
So,
All right, so what is the board's feeling on public meetings? Recreation, heritage, conservation, planning.
Question is, I think
Budget.
I would leave that up to them if it's gonna be less than 10 or so. I don't have a problem with that myself.
My
They're
thought,
coming into this building, into this room to utilize
Yeah,
it.
I think the direction needs to come from this board at this point in time to effectively stop the public meetings.
I agree. I think if we're going to go to a virtual town hall, and we have a concern for our employees, we probably should have it for the committees as well.
Yes, for all volunteers and elected
Should.
officials that are on those.
Should stop it completely.
I mean, I can't see, basically, I'm thinking like, for instance, recreation. There's nothing going to be going on for the next couple of months anyway, everything's called off. I can't see too much that we can't postpone,
and I think if there's an exigent circumstance that it could be set up remotely, no different than you're talking about running your meeting. If that were to come up, that could be,
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna
addressed as
Biggest
a
would be
one-off,
something on
and
zoning or
you're gonna have to deal with it on a case by case basis. The zoning board of adjustment, someone could be in the middle of a project that needs a variance, and I'll have to work with IT to set up a virtual meeting. like we just discussed.
We know the
Board of
guidelines.
Selectmen.
Chances of that are almost nil.
I know.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah, I know. And so that's what I'm
I
saying.
mean, it should
Case by
be
case.
addressed.
Yeah. So we can deal with it on a case by
I
case.
think you can.
Yeah.
Very simply, you know, the telephones work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stick one in your ear, you'll solve the problem.
And I think it behooves us to get things set up so that, you know, in a couple of weeks, we may be forced to, you know, I hate to think of worst case scenarios, but, you know, we may be forced to take some extraordinary measures, you know.
So I think what we'd want to do is suspend all meetings except for emergency board of selectmen and emergency management.
And even at that, we've, as I mentioned earlier, we're having another emergency management meeting Wednesday at 2, and we're doing that virtually so that we're not all in the same room.
Who wants to leave? We're over 10.
I make that motion too.
So we have a
We're
motion.
spread out.
We have a motion by Mr. Pinciero,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Leary. Any further discussion?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0.
Question on the virtual meeting. Do they have to see our hands go up as you told me I had to do it?
No, that's
No,
actually
because he's
private.
going to do a
Roll
roll call.
Yeah.
And you'll be on the phone, so we don't have to look at you.
I had to go to human.
So I think the next thing we need to address are all the public buildings and facilities.
So at this point in time, Talon Hall, Fire Station Community Room, and Darapon Playground
The
Equipment.
fire station's been closed.
And
We've,
it's-
yeah,
that's-
we've pretty much shut the
Right.
fire station down at this point.
It's our emergency
for-
operations center, so it's,
It's been
And
sanitized.
I can tell you that every department around us has locked the door and, you know,
I
they'll
make a
address
motion, we
needs.
Close Town Hall, Talon Hall,
Mhm.
and
Their playground.
Their-
instruct the police department to put crime tape on the Darapon playground set. That'll deter them from getting on it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Pinciero,
Second.
second by Mr. Leary. Any further discussion?
I prefer not crime tape.
Any kind of tape.
I like-
I'll
I think if
donate
I-
some
yellow
caution tape.
Yeah, you know.
I have a couple of
Caution
rolls. I have a couple of
If
rolls of
I
that.
could, I know we kind of already, but I think for continuity, if you include the fire department as well.
Okay.
And the
fire
police department by
Police
virtue
and
of
fire.
being in the town hall, just so it's across, you know,
I'll
the,
include the firehouse, fire station, community room.
Poor kid fell and got out.
Okay. Still have your second?
Yes, as
Any
amended.
further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0.
I wonder what the school's doing about playgrounds.
They're the ones who brought it up to us, and they were gonna have a discussion this afternoon.
Because I know there were kids at Griffin this
Yeah,
afternoon.
today.
And the schools are closed. You're going to expect that they're
Yeah, they just
they're
didn't
not going
have
to pay a
it.
lot of attention, but at least we've taken the initiative to.
And what it was is they were hearing that a lot of families were gonna have playgroups because the kids were off from school, and it's the reason they're not gonna go to school. So that's when they started thinking about the playgrounds coming
they
into
left,
play.
the indication they gave us was they were
They're
going
gonna
to
close them also.
close all of the school property. They had opened the schools 3 to 6, I think it
today.
was, for
To get
students
work,
to
yeah.
come get whatever, because when they left Friday, they didn't realize they were not coming back today. So after essentially 6 o'clock tonight, the buildings are shut down, other than for their food service folks on Monday and
Mondays and
Wednesdays to prepare lunches. So Mondays, people will go in and get 2 lunches. Wednesdays, they'll go in and get 3 between 11 and 2. And they've worked out plans to deliver if need be and so forth. So, but beyond that, the schools are pretty much closed. And I think Mike indicated pretty much it was going to include the playgrounds and fields and everything too. So
All new.
Yes.
Yep.
So the next motion we will need has to do with town hall. What do we want to do about town hall?
we,
Do you want to close it to the public for the time being?
move forward with the virtual town hall concept, with, appointments being made on an individual basis.
Employees still coming to work.
Employees
at this
still
time.
coming to work. And we can use that flexibility of, if they can work remotely.
Gonna take time to set all that up.
It is. We're gonna have to get through and like I said, once we get a week
Can you do it by Wednesday?
established, we'll know where we'll need more guidance from the board.
Can
The
you,
outside
can you
world
have it done by
depends on the
Wednesday?
outside.
Can you?
Yeah, no, I believe we can have it done by Wednesday. Everyone in the
And
room
have another
today,
Meeting after you
Yeah.
kind of get it all laid out.
Yeah.
You get an idea of what we're
You
gonna
have
do.
realtors,
Yeah,
you're gonna
that's a
want
great idea.
cards.
Yeah.
You're going to.
Again, they can-
They
You
can-
know, the concept is they can call, that can be done and can be walked out to a car or emailed or, you know.
A week to get this, I think a week to get some of the little details together. We don't really have to shut down right away. I think by the end of this week, we'll have everything in place or the.
well, I
next meeting.
think that tomorrow we,
Should be able to do it
on the
tomorrow.
18th, Wednesday is the 18th. That's when we turn to virtual town hall. And
I don't think I'm gonna say, but that's me.
yeah,
Well,
we're
I
gonna
think-
discover some things we didn't think of, but every day we'll make corrections.
We get closer and closer.
I think if you look at,
Wednesday, you'll
Okay.
put this into play on
Yeah.
Wednesday? Okay.
That's what the towns,
All right. No,
surrounding us
I
are doing.
agree.
Yeah.
I'm just.
You gotta do it I know, it's, you
I
gotta
think
do
if-
Pick
it.
a day. Pick a
It's
day.
not gonna be easy what day we
Sounds good
pick,
to
but,
me.
you know.
and I think,
Okay. What day is it?
you know, if you look at Wednesday, it's just going to be, I'd say locked, but locked. So you're not going to be able to come in. Doesn't mean you can't call and do whatever you need to do, get questions answered. Staff is going to be here. So the rest of the week's going to be more a transition to, and we'll have a better idea. Okay, do we want to start minimizing the number of people in any given department? But at least for tomorrow, you're
Get
working
ready.
away from the business as we've known it. Wednesday, basically, the building is secured. People will still be here to emails, phone calls, handle online issues.
Numbers to reach people
Yeah.
on.
Door.
the floor.
Yeah, we've already got kind
And
of
put it on.
got a template to work out.
TV channel.
Cable, maybe the WhatsApp page and all that stuff.
So I know this is going to keep changing as we go, but we're going to have to really think of a board, what is going to be the gating item to make us open up again? It's going to have to be some
think
point
we
in
know.
time. We don't know. That's what I'm saying.
I
But
don't
that's
think
something
we
we're going to
know.
always have to keep in mind is what is that gating item going to be?
I think you gotta leave that up to the town administrator.
Yep.
He's gonna know if it's working or if it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna be here to watch it.
Yeah. And
Now, speaking more as we got further down, eventually coming out of the backside of this, at what point is it the item that says, bam, let's go back to business as usual?
I think you're gonna get.
I think it's going to be very much like
Ways to go.
what we're doing right now, what the science is telling us, what the recommendations that are coming in from CDC and the state and Health and Human Services and what our neighbors are doing.
It all
You know,
boils down to
but-
what comes out of the television set, be honest with you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, you got the White House doing something, you got the CDC doing something. It's all been, they're stirring the pot. No one knows where it's going.
So let's give it a week.
Yep.
See what it looks like.
You'll
Next Wednesday.
build a
week from
gauge,
Wednesday.
yeah, we
What does
build
it
a
look
gauge,
like
what's
now?
going on and
See what's happening.
So you say it's
Is this
25th? Is
working? Huh?
that what you say? It's
No,
25th?
close
Or-
Wednesday,
A
but
week
run
from
it for a week
Wednesday.
and see well, and I think that's a given. You know, we're going to be making adjustments internally on a daily, on an hourly basis as things come up, as, somebody calls with something we didn't think of. It's no different, quite honestly, than the state and the nation is doing. As things pop up,
Smaller
okay.
scale, that's all.
And we're going to get a lot of
Exactly.
input on your Monday, Wednesday, Friday calls
Yep.
that you're on with
Yep.
Homeland Security. So
Oh, and even in between, things are coming up. And like I said,
Would it be, since I'm around a lot, could I go to these staff meetings? I know-
well, we're doing them virtual now.
You don't
Meaning,
wanna-
so yeah, you can just call in.
You want to shake my
Right?
hand?
You can just add, you got enough room? Yeah. I think the only thing you got to be careful with is the numbers, right?
Yeah.
If it's more
Yeah,
than
no.
3 of you, then it's,
Yeah, you
yeah.
can't have over
So
three.
your
that's the
call.
biggest thing.
Who's under the flagpole?
Just if anyone's going to call in, let me know who's calling in so we can make sure we don't go over 3.
I don't forget.
doesn't count.
Don't have 3, have 2.
Right.
Okay.
In talking with solid waste and highway, there wasn't really any major concern.
They've shut,
Shut down the good.
they've shut down their goods table,
Yeah, the swap table.
the swap table.
Better known as the Litchfield Mall.
Yeah.
They're using
Flea market is
gloves,
Gonna be mad.
eye protection, disinfecting.
Yep, they're bleaching
constantly.
everything.
They have some they got some protection from the citizens, so I think they're in a good shape, actually.
It's an open area.
Yeah,
It's
and
not a
highway,
confined
They
area,
got
so.
ventilation.
and highway had no concerns at all.
Okay.
Fire
No, the biggest
department-
concern, the biggest concern there is if, all of them get sick.
Yeah.
Then it's just a matter of what, how we handle it.
So do we need to make a motion to do that, the virtual town hall, or
Yes.
we don't? So I would suggest that we make a motion to, as it's written here.
I'll second that.
Guidelines.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lynch. We have a second by Mr. LaSalle. Mr. Larry, I'm sorry, I insulted
Would you
you.
read it to the public?
It says Town Hall closed to the public until further notice. However, all departments will still be working to serve the residents of Litchfield. The town will do its best to operate by a virtual town hall. Residents will be encouraged to conduct business online, by email, by phone, or in special cases, an individual appointment may be scheduled. Employees with town personnel to complete.
Yeah, the last sentence should have been deleted.
That's okay.
I just went to the city of Nashville Town Hall, and the building department today.
What
All
did
open concept.
what'd they say?
Beautiful, nice up there. They're
Yeah,
not doing anything right now.
no.
Okay.
So we had a motion by Mr. Larry. We had a second by Mr. LaSalle. Any discussion?
It's important to know for the people that it's still running. It's just running
Behind doors.
behind doors, yeah.
Electronically, email,
Over the phone.
telephone calls.
Pick up the phone,
Yeah.
so.
Instead of
There's a
showing up at
question,
the door.
call.
Yeah.
Call.
You have a question,
Somebody's going
call.
to answer the phone.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0.
Okay.
I think that's, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's.
Make a motion that we adjourn?
Well, we're not done talking yet. You spoke all night. What about
I think at this point in time, the last piece that's important is that at this point in time, no employees will lose their base pay, depending on what actions we take, because they've either traveled, we think that they may have symptoms.
Or someone in the house is sick,
Or
we'd like them to stay home.
We're asking them to do the rotation thing, all that. At this point in time, we're not going to require employees to use their earned time or sick time.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be kept whole until we start getting into this
I
learning
do have
curve.
a question. These people that have gone on vacation and they're coming back, is the intent to pay them because we're telling them they can't work?
Because we're telling them they can't come back to work.
We're telling
They-
Tell them not, so.
They're not saying they're sick. They're willing and able to come to work, but I'm telling them you can't.
So how long of a duration are we gonna have them not?
Well,
come?
that's,
That's the
you know,
conversation we need.
so here's the thing, is
Isolation
14
time.
14 days.
14
I think
days.
right now you've got
No less than 14.
some
Yeah.
that have gone, and as this has escalated,
Yeah.
I have not talked to anybody who has plans to go on a trip at this point.
Oh,
you
but
know,
we should
um,
cancel all.
Yeah.
Town related business travel.
Yeah, I think that
Definitely,
was,
I don't think we hit that,
That's
did
in
we?
there.
yeah,
It's
it
in
was in there. It's actually the first line.
So if somebody has traveled, then they're not going to be allowed to work for 14 days.
And that's not to say
the
that, like, I
condition.
got this one employee,
Yeah.
which could most likely do a lot of work remotely.
Yeah.
There's
But, I mean-
events they can do, and there's a lot of work they can
The
do.
other option there is depending and not to paint the canvas with a 4-inch brush, but where they went, how long they were gone for, but to be able to evaluate that and say, okay, you weren't in a hot spot or you were in a hot spot. And then, worst case, send them to an occupational provider for clearance to come back type thing. And maybe it doesn't take the whole 14 days.
Problem is they're on an airplane with a bunch of people, they don't know who they are.
Right.
This
And
individual
that's,
is
and that's some of the challenge.
This person
They
came
wanna rethink that.
came home internationally, went through Los Angeles, and
Yeah.
the plane was
And that's
Full.
what's happened.
That's
A lot
three
of these
strikes.
people
Right. But if it's somebody that was, 2 states away and drove,
Right.
we may not need to treat them the same
They're
way.
coming
So,
from over anywhere outside the country.
Even in the country, if you're in
14
Washington
days is
State or
minimum.
California,
Don't fly up
Massachusetts.
to
Massachusetts is number 4 on the list right
That's
now.
right.
So,
Yeah.
What's that?
so in the list of cases they're number 4. So they're the 4th highest number of cases in the country.
Well, in
So-
other words, you can't, the
Yeah, I'm
surrounding
looking down
states that touch New Hampshire, we're all set with.
Well,
You're going this way or that way.
So Bob, we should make a motion off. of
Vermont's
town
got a
employee
couple.
safety.
Didn't that come
The
down
whole bottom
today?
part.
Yeah, Vermont's got
Yes.
2 or 3, I believe.
We got a young one, it's an 18-year-old.
That's too bad.
So I'll make a motion that we enforce the town employee safety clause, if you will, at the bottom of this sheet as written.
Would you like me to read it?
I would
You'll-
love for you to read it once it's seconded.
Well, I think we might want to read it
The
before
only-
we reach a motion.
So I just want to mention that if you get a second, before you read it, I want to point something out.
Okay.
Bob, you want to read the paragraph? Is that what you're saying?
Well, okay, let me go. So when I wrote this, it was early in the day. The first 2 sentences I would not want to be the town policy, which is
I agree.
there are no current plans to allow employees to work from home. However, if employees wish to use accrued earned time or sick leave, they may do so with supervisor approval. So I don't want that to be, at this point in time, that's not what we're doing.
So we leaving that up to
So
the
start it
department
with
heads?
town employees
Yep.
shall
So
not.
as-
Only the last section that you're.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's the
Yes.
last paragraph is what.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Okay.
You want that read or?
Yes, I would love the chairman to read it.
Okay.
Town employees shall not be allowed to travel out of state on town business until further notice. Employees who have been exposed to a person infected with COVID-19, quarantined by a federal or state mandate, or returning to work from vacation, or out-of-state travels should not be allowed to return to work without the Board of Selectmen approval. In such cases, employees shall be paid their base wages in full without use of earned time. Informational signs are to be put up at the town building's entrance to keep all people informed.
The only thing I would add to that is we should have a time frame involved in this, or a statement that
Until-
this will be,
Until further, well, I got until further notice.
okay, all right.
So we have a motion by Mr. Larry,
I'll second that motion.
second by Mr. Pinciero. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0. Does anyone have any other items of business?
No, but maybe for the next meeting, as I discussed with you today, something about the PFOAs, which it seems
To be heating up
to
again?
be heating up again, especially up the north end of town off of Hillcrest. I got a folder from a lady in town who's on her second battle with cancer. And seems to be a whole group of people in that area that have had issues. She had her water tested. It was above the level that is recommended by quite a bit, I think. St. Cobain did not reimburse her for her, they refused to pay for it and then didn't reimburse her for it. So I think we might need to address that at some point. There's quite a few people up in that area that have had issues and they don't know where to turn. So that's why we're here, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
So Mr. Brown, could you please add that to the agenda for our next scheduled meeting?
Yeah.
Our next scheduled meeting is Monday, March 23rd, 2020, unless we need to have an emergency meeting beforehand.
So are we gonna do that over the phone or are we gonna do it in person?
I think at this time, we'll probably would want to try the virtual.
So you.
I think we can do
someone's
it.
gonna have to set up numbers and
Yep,
codes.
I'll work with John and Troy and
Okay.
we'll get it all set up.
Okay.
Frank, if you can keep giving us the updates like you have, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your work.
You're welcome.
John, thank you for all your efforts.
What's that you say?
Him and IT gotta come up, but you got the fuse.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Mr. Pinciero, second by Mr. Larry. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstained? Motion carries 5-0-0.
Now I can slap that.
Yes. Everyone have a wonderful evening and stay safe.